Here goes.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of 1+1, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. And we are rejoined by Boyan Stanislavski, editor of the Barricade, which is a pan-Eastern European left-wing news outlet. And we're going to be continuing on with an interesting conversation that we had last time about Eastern European affairs, both current affairs and the past. So we're just going to get right into it. So, Boyan, first off, thanks for coming back on the program.
Thank you, Youri. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on 1+1.
Likewise, my man. And so Boyan, so the first question I wanted to talk to you about is because we were talking we were talking about Poland, the current state of affairs of Poland. And of course, in our last conversation, and of course, in general, when we talk about Eastern European politics, we tend to sort of go to the present and to the past and to the present. So before we talk about the current state of affairs in Eastern Europe, I wanted to talk about Poland for a bit, because we were talking about the last time we talked, we were talking about the very negative role NGOs have played in Eastern European affairs, and also the expat communities, those civil society organizations, mostly based in the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere. And we were talking a bit about how some of them have lots of far right Nazi skeletons in their closets, and that in general their influence on Eastern European affairs has been very, very reactionary, has been very negative. And we were talking about, Solidarity, which the anti-communist trade union organization, which the NGO world and a lot of the left, propped up as these wonderful knights in shining armor. And of course, in recent years, it's now painfully obvious that they were getting lots of money from the CIA, the National Endowment of Democracy. Now, another person who's had whose legacy doesn't get critically assessed as much as it should was Pope John Paul II, the previous pope before Ratzinger, and the current pope that we have now, Pope Francis. Now, was he also now is it safe to say that when he became pope that he was also, you can say, a CIA asset that basically destroyed the social fabric of Poland and of course the ripple effect on across Eastern Europe?
I think it's difficult to say whether John Paul II was directly funded by National Endowment for Democracy, and whether Solidarity, in whatever period of its existence, because it still does exist, has
Solidarity
overtaken.
still exists even.
Yeah, it's a major labor confederation here in Poland. So yeah.
Oh wow! Because when I was doing some research about this, okay, so I think I probably misread when I was reading that, like, its membership has been dropping, that it meant that it was no longer in existence.
Yeah, of course. Look, but what I'm trying to say is that there is no, I don't think there's any direct evidence which would be a matter of public record where, it would be, that would prove that, whatever Solidarity or any other anti-communist organization or an opposition organization before 1989 has directly accepted money from National Endowment of Democracy, or whatever other organization which is, the front player for the CIA and stuff like that. What is known, however, is that it has accepted, and this is a matter of public record, it has accepted a lot of money from the West, and unfortunately, again, this is a problematic notion, I would say, because a lot of those money, a lot of this money, it flew through other union organizations, from Sweden, from Norway, from France, from Britain, from America as well, like AFL, CIO.
Yeah.
And so now, it's very difficult to figure out, I suppose, today in particular, like where did the money come from exactly, who ordered the transfers, and so on and so forth. Like, we don't know that. Okay, or at least, I'm not aware of any evidence for this direct thing confirming 100% that solidarity was just treason and betrayal for money and so on and so forth. And
Yeah.
on top of everything, I want to say that I don't think it was that, because people often think about solidarity as well, as something from the past that was that was a one-off thing. Okay, and it, like, an organization set up to confront this communist state, so-called communist state, which is a nonsensical phrase in and out of itself, but that's of course a different conversation. And no, I mean, it's not exactly, it's not at all like this. Solidarity was a movement born in the late 70s, and I would argue it was a movement genuinely set up by the workers to
Okay.
confront not the communist state or socialist state or whatever you want to refer to the People's Republic of Poland at the time, but it was there. I mean, it was created in order to defend the interests of the working class that were endangered. And now, again, it's a different conversation. Why were they endangered? To what extent? And so on and so forth. But suffice to say that, the decades of progress that we have experienced throughout Eastern Europe after the Second World War have also had an impact on the general consciousness of the working classes on the working class in all those countries. And in Poland, it happened so that the working class was empowered by that. And not only in Poland, but in Poland, it was like empowered in a specific way, and also it was confronted by the authorities in a specific way, and also the authorities have made some very specific mistakes that altogether, I'm sorry for the simplifications and the kind of
No, it's
speaking
all right.
in those general terms, but otherwise I would be talking here for like 90 minutes just about the creation of solidarity.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like it created a situation where the workers thought that what makes sense is to create an independent labor union. And that's what solidarity was at the beginning. And because after the 4 decades after 1945, people were already getting very tired with all kinds of things, because except for that progress, except for that development, except for that civilizational upswing, uplift that pretty much, and the great leap forward in terms of social and cultural advance, okay, of the entire society. I don't want to go into the details, like literacy, education, public transit, inclusion, poverty elimination, and so on and so forth. Okay, homelessness, all that kind of stuff that we know. Like, I suppose the majority of the viewers of your channel know about that. Okay. So apart from that, there was also a lot of frustration, and this frustration came mostly from the fact that it was a very authoritarian project from the beginning. And when you have an openly authoritarian project, then it obviously makes people tired at one point, because what's the problem with the authoritarian the biggest problem with authoritarian projects? Well, the thing is that they do not enter in a proper dialogue with people, in particularly where it's required. Because let's say
Yeah.
we had the Polish United Workers Party that was at the top, and actually most people, despite the fact that some might have voted, might have wanted to vote for someone else and stuff, maybe they would like to have more pluralism, but this was not the thing. Okay, that was not what irritated people, that there's the party there and that it's one party system. Okay. So that was not the problem. The problem was, for example, that they had no say in many other aspects of life where they wanted to have a say, because we're talking about aspects of life which are important for them, fundamental sometimes. And things like, for example, say purchasing a washing machine. That was a very difficult thing Okay, that was a very difficult process under the regime before 1989. And this is, and why was that? Well, because of misplanning, because of too many exports, because of all kinds of stuff, because of lack of proper organization of this particular segment of market, and many others as well. So I'm giving you this example because that's an element that's really building. It contributes to piling up of frustration and resentment. Okay, because
Yeah.
people need washing machines. Okay, and washing machines were also part of the availability of the washing machines was also part of the general civilizational uplift, okay, of the entire society. And yet it turns out that you cannot actually use them, or you cannot purchase them even if you had money for that. So and then food shortages, bread lines sometimes, and stuff like that. uh, that that was something that obviously had to be addressed. Okay, and in the beginning of the say the first 2 decades of the People's Republic, then you know the new powers that be had a lot of credit of trust, because it was the after war period. The half of the country was destroyed, the capital of the country was destroyed, the economy had to be everything had to be rebuilt, basically, some of the things from scratch, and so on and so forth. And also there was this geopolitical thing, in a way that, and I'm not talking about Soviet Union, the beginnings of the Cold War. I'm talking about the thing that Poland, for example, okay, it territorially changed, like the territory of Poland changed a lot after the Second World War. So you had to basically colonize certain areas, and then receive the people that apparently used to be Polish citizens, and were ended up somewhere outside the borders of the new the Polish People's Republic as it emerged after 1945. So there were a lot of problems. Okay, and people were able to somehow tolerate certain inaccuracies, let's call it, okay, in the general functioning of the system. But then after the decade of prosperity, relative prosperity in the 60s, and quite serious prosperity, particularly for Poland in the 70s, then people they started to demand things. Okay, and because of the authoritarianism of that project, then the powers that be, they kind of refused to really enter into proper dialogue. And moreover, I would say that they even did not actually know how to reply, okay, to the demands. And that was the
Yeah.
major problem. Probably if they had an idea how to actually manage the whole thing, they would have come to the table and they would have discussed with whatever labor unions or other consumer organizations or something like that. But they had no idea. And why did they have no idea? That's again another story. Well, because of the model of planning, and because of the political model, which was, and again, I'm going to be very, very general here, okay, because we got to go to John Paul II and the expats. But the regimes. What was Soviet Union, and what were the other regimes that were mimicking Soviet Union? Well, I was essentially war communism institutionalized. That's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
And under war communism, there wasn't really much planning. Okay, I mean, there was some planning, but not so much. And that's why the planned economy was there, was in play.
You have no time for endless debates and motions,
That's true.
because it's like, guys, we're fighting an enemy over here.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened. Okay, that's how it turned out, like the whole endeavor. But and I don't want to go into the details of it. I don't want to go into why and whether it could have been prevented, more democratic, and so on and so forth. That's what it was. Now the problem with this was that the planning of the actual planning of the economy was really something that I heard someone. I wish I could claim the authorship of that phrase. Unfortunately, I don't even know whom I heard. I can't remember whom I heard it from. But it was pretense planning. Okay, I mean, it wasn't a real substantial planning of the economy. Like, where are you now, and where do you want to be in 10 years' time? I mean, there was some posturing in those terms, but not really, not much. They planned, and most of the planning was actually focused not so much on planning on managing investments, which is the essence of planning, but on regulating prices. So it wasn't a proper planned economy. It was a kind of a commanded economy and price control economy, because when you start your planning with deciding 1 million prices, and then trying to adjust the entire market to the decision you took for the final thing, which are the prices, then it's difficult to go very far. And of course, because of that mismanagement, every once in a while, crises occurred and shortages occurred, and things went out of control, because when you have a fixed price, then it's very difficult to really make any movements, okay, because the price is something that you can generally play with, okay. And that those shortages, that kind of mismanagement, the kind of the growing gap, okay, in terms of wealth between regular people and the elite of the party and so on. Of course, I mean, of course, let's just stress on that, and let's be clear that it cannot be even compared, okay, to the wealth gap and to the divisions that we can observe now under capitalism. But still,
Exactly.
it was visible, and people were frustrated, and legitimately frustrated over that kind of stuff. And that's when solidarity, in those circumstances, okay, solidarity starts to emerge. The workers, they feel empowered because there's a lot of them. They are strong. The industry, again, that's one of the mismanagements. Like, let's invest in heavy industry, as if the heavy industry decides everything. No, for the regular citizen, what decides things, which is the comfort of everyday life, it's the light industry. That's what it decides. But no, we had to go through, the kind of the Stalinist model and so on and so forth. So, but of course, it had an effect, a very empowering effect of the working class, and they were constantly prized, right? The working class, like the miners, the steel workers, the shipyard workers, everybody, and finally, when they went on, when there were these violent strikes in the end of the 70s, okay, and also the level, the kind of this. What their experience, okay, their life experience, that things are getting better, that they can now live in towns, they can get educated, those workers, I'm talking about that also had an effect in a way that, okay, so now we want even more, which is good, okay, like we want more, we've achieved this, we've achieved that, and now we want, like, I don't know, our Saturdays to be free, for example, or our whatever, or we disagree with the price increase, because that was finally, in this mismanaged, pretensely planned economy, then at one moment they had to drastically increase prices because they were not able to manage things. And we're talking about prices for everyday basic products like bread, milk, and so on and so forth. So they would oppose that because they felt much more confident, the working class, okay? And they would oppose that. And then, I even remember, well, I remember, I mean, I wasn't there, I wasn't even born, but I remember when people told me stories, I mean, from people that, when I heard stories from people that have actually seen it with their own two eyes, that, the party, high-ranking party officials would actually even go, okay, to large factories or large whatever workplaces like shipyards and industrial plants. Okay, so definitely they did feel confident, and when the party refused to enter into kind of friendly dialogue with them, then they started getting more militant, but they were never anti-socialist, and that's the thing. They never had in their mind the notion that is attributed to them absolutely falsely, that solidarity was set up in order to abolish the communist state. Okay,
Okay.
that's not true.
So
Let's
that's a
just go
so that's a misconception that some people have.
Yeah, many people have, but probably the majority of people who have ever heard of that have
Okay.
this kind of misconception. That's not true. The union was created with the genuine goal of defending the working class positions, interests against certain measures that were uh, that the current administration was taking. Okay, like it could be the price increase, it could be the norms in factories that they had to for example, they were also increasing, and so on and so forth, like all kinds of stuff. So that was it. But then, of course, because, as I said, it was an authoritarian project, they had a very strong security apparatus. And the fundamental pillar of that security apparatus were, of course, the intelligence were the intelligence organizations. And solidarity was a kind of was an attempt to, on the one hand, build a labor union that will unite the working class against the measures that they did not like that the authorities were undertaking. But on the other hand, it also quickly turned into some kind of into a place for people who wanted to voice their discontent with how things were going. Okay, at least in certain in certain aspects.
Yeah.
And this is why because before that, there wasn't anything like this. It quickly gained a lot of dynamic. Okay, it quickly became a very important point of reference for all open-minded people who wanted to do away with all the kind of the pathological elements that were piling up since the emergence of the People's Republic. And that's how it was established, and that's how it quite quickly became a mass organization. And it did become a mass organization, probably the most massive organization in the history of Poland, most likely. Okay, we're talking about probably 10 million people. Okay, in the beginning of the 80s, like at the break of the 80s. So it was an element that the powers were not able to ignore, and they were even prepared to make some concessions. But then, after the West discovered that, oh, we have such a nice organization here that we could exploit, and it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
They never even changed the record. When you look at Cuba today, the same thing. Like, I don't know, 100 people on the streets, and they get so excited as if I mean, the Western media, they get so excited as they are reporting revolution or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same with Iran. When there was like protests that break out in Iran, the West is very quick to like jump on, like, aha, the Islamic Republic of Iran is finally going to fall, and it's like,
yeah, of course. Now, what I'm trying to say is that all those institutions, they immediately institutions and states and governments and intelligence agencies and all the rest of it, they immediately spotted that. Okay, because you're not able to hide, you're not really able to hide, like, from the global public opinion, an emergence of a 10 million strong social movement. So of course they took their own measures, and they started influencing, and they started bribing people, and they started corrupting people, and they started sending their own agents, and they started doing all the things that the governments hostile to a country like the Polish People's Republic would do.
yeah.
Okay. So now, and again, as I said in the beginning, I don't know whether it was the National Endowment of Democracy, whether it was any other organization, whether it was the CIA directly, whether the CIA was giving money to other unions all around Europe in order to flux money into to Solidarity. And we don't know this, but what we do know for sure is that the first Solidarity, that's what it's referred to in Poland and in Polish historiography, even to a certain extent. The first Solidarity was a genuine social movement, labor movement or labor-led social movement that was focused not on fighting socialism, but on improving socialism, and that was their slogan. Actually, their main slogan from that time was "Socialism, yes; perversions." Or I'm not sure how to translate it. The kind of pathologies, no. That's the kind of that's the kind of thing that they had on their banners. Okay, so like socialism, yes, but the kind of the pathologies of the system, no. That was the notion that people were gathered around, not down with socialism or down with the Reds or anything like that. Okay, but now, because of that, because of this movement being so massive, because of the beginnings of the Western interference, because of the lack of responses that the powers that be at the time were able to offer, because of the only not the only, but because of the fact that they had very strong security apparatus. So instead of the only response that they could have offered is they're gonna crush the movement, but they did not want to crush the movement in a way like the Soviets did in 1968, or like, in
With
1956.
with the former Czechoslovakia, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what I'm referring to. Or in Hungary in 1956, because, those were different times already. Okay. I mean, where Joe Stalin had died long ago at the time, and mm, that wouldn't have looked good. Okay. And the pressure was big, and there was crisis, and there was crisis not only in the Polish People's Republic or in the Eastern Bloc, but it was global crisis because of the, 1974 and the oil prices and so. So, they didn't want to go down that way, and at the same time, they were threatened all the time by Moscow that if you don't do something about it, we're going to send the tanks. So they were,
Oh wow.
look, I don't want to excuse them. Okay, I don't want it to sound like I'm excusing them, because I'm not, and I don't support that decision. But they had to do something about it. So either they're going to crush it themselves, okay, with their own hands, and they're going to just prevent the falling apart of the state and the kind of further gaining thrust of that movement and the interference of the West and so on and so forth, or the Soviets are going to do it for them, and then you don't know what would actually have happened with those that were at the top of the power pyramid in Poland at that time. So what they did is they decided, okay, so we gotta clean this mess, right? And they introduced the martial law in December 1981, and they started, sort of uh, uh, um, kind of decomposing the movement. I mean, bit by bit, and so on and so forth. Uh, and uh, and of course, by making by sending their into that movement to leadership positions people that were their own agents, like,
Yeah.
of their security services. And that's, for example, the story of Lech Walesa, the first Polish president, whatever, democratically elected and stuff like that. So he now it's a matter of public record that he was a secret cooperative, an asset of the secret services of the Polish People's Republic. Okay, a long time. It took, like, 2 decades of speculation and stuff like that, and until today he rejects that. But everybody knows this now, because the documents are out.
Wait,
And
but you're saying he wasn't a Western asset. He was more of
no,
an
no,
asset.
no, no, no. He was an asset of the Polish, at the time, Polish secret services. That's what he
Okay.
was, an asset. Okay. And then that's on a later stage how things happened, so that he became really one of the people that the West has fallen in love with. But that's on a later stage.
Okay.
Now, and he's always been an absolute moron. I mean, he has got no ideas. He has got no idea about the world. He doesn't have any stable political convictions. He can't speak Polish properly. He was never a good specialist in terms of, like, whatever he was working at in the factory where he was working, the shipyard in Gdansk, and so he was no one. Okay, that's why he was chosen, like, to go there and to be the leader of the strike and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So basically, the first solidarity, it fell apart and was crushed by the communist authorities. Okay, that's what happened. And I think that the choice that they had made at the time, which is to introduce the martial law and to clean the mess with their own hands, was much better than to wait until the Soviets would come and do that. Because, I mean, well, we have, like, I don't remember the exact statistics, probably around 100 people died during the martial law, which lasted until 1983. So, I mean, I'm not trying to say that that even one life lost in this kind of conflict is one life too many. But
like,
you can have you can really have a conflict where hundreds of thousands of people are repressed and died and tortured and so on and so forth. So they really tried their best, okay, and to their credit, to make it, like, hurt as little as possible. And again, I don't support this. I don't support this as a process. I don't like this idea. I think it was dictatorial and stupid and so on and so forth. But on the other hand, I just, looking at the bigger picture, I just don't see what were they supposed to do. And this is, when you go to to many Polish lefties, leftists and ask them that question, because they will shout against, the Polish People's Republic, how undemocratic it was, and the martial law, crime against the Polish nation and the working class, and so on. Okay, yeah, I get it. But what were they supposed to do? I mean, they were supposed to give up and wait for the Soviets, or they were supposed to do what exactly in order to be able? I guess they could have maybe extended the dialogue. Maybe they could have done something else.
It sounds like it was one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't situations.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, right? And then after that, when it was already pretty clear that things are rottening in the camp, in the entire Eastern camp, Soviet camp and stuff like that, and that perhaps the first rumors were heard, say around 1984, 85, the first rumors were heard that actually some major changes are ahead of us, okay? Then they, the Polish authorities thought that they should actually revive solidarity, because it will, they will, in order to have a controlled opposition. If things are, if the Soviets would really one day, as it turned out to be true, withdraw, and things would change and stuff. So they wanted to have a controlled opposition, and they recreated artificially solidarity, which we refer to in Poland as the second solidarity. And of course, for people who are completely demoralized and stupid intellectually, and I don't know, unintelligent emotionally, and are just random idiots like Lech Walesea, of course, for them that was a perfect place, and they were among the first invited, of course, right? and there's also this there's a lot of evidence for how even some remnants of the first Solidarity and other opposition organizations, which used to be on the left and defended the working class from the left and confronted the authorities of that time from the left, they also entered the second the second artificially created Solidarity, because they thought that still they want to be part of some changes, okay? But at the time, it's very important to understand this, in my opinion, that at the time it was already not a genuine grassroots movement. It was a created movement where the powers that be were creating a partner for them to discuss. It's a bit like setting up a yellow union, at a workplace, so that you can have, okay? And of course, I'm not saying that it's again that it's completely meaningless or senseless, or that it was some kind of morally or politically despicable to actually join that new artificially created Solidarity, because that was a chance. Like, what else would you do? I mean, obviously you were not able to recreate Solidarity the way it was done in the late 70s and the beginning of the 80s, because that train had passed at that moment. So that was it. And then, there's evidence about how those people that had connections to the old Solidarity, how they discussed with the Secret Service officers, with other people, that look, we're not gonna make revolution over anything here now. We just want to have a smooth transition. We want to have things in place, and we're gonna help you, okay? Preserve power, be in power. We're gonna be friendly with you, and so on and so forth. And we need your help to combat the extremist elements in the new Solidarity, because some people that were genuinely thinking that they're going to now launch a new struggle and so on and so forth, they were also there. But the bureaucracy of the new Solidarity, which also, as I mentioned, recruited people from the old, they also they didn't want that. They wanted to have a peaceful thing, okay, peaceful process going on. And this is how it did go up until 1989. And then, the Western influence was already pretty welcomed in that new Solidarity, and it could have been whatever, again, National Endowment for Democracy, any other organization, but it was welcomed because that Solidarity was already under the control of the authorities, okay? And the Americans, by the way, they've understood that perfectly, and they thought it's a great thing that is going down that way. And they organized meetings. For example, the Polish president, pretty much the same guy that that was the head of the state during the martial law. He was a general and stuff like that. Then he was the Polish president also later on, and the Americans had a very cozy relationship with him, and they made sure every step of the way that he is in charge of everything. and that's how the Americans effectively made sure that the army basically was in charge of doing the transition. The most important steps in terms of the
Wow.
transition. Yeah, to capitalism in Poland. And I mean, this guy, his name is Jaruzelski. He had meetings in New York with people like Rockefeller, and and with the American president, with Reagan. It's like it was really all organized, okay, and they knew they have to go. Okay, I mean, they knew they have to go. They will not be able to maintain this dictatorial power that they did, that they have been maintaining, since 1945. That was clear to everyone. It was a bit of a surprise when the Soviet Union fell apart, actually, and when they, I mean, no one thought they're going to go that far, okay, but they did. And of course, it's another story about Gorbachev and the gerontocracy at the top of the
Yeah.
Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and so forth. And then at that time, Valencia was also, was greatly appreciated by the West. And for everyone, it was great to have a person like this without any capacity, okay, whatsoever, any knowledge, any ideas, to have them as the first president of the democratic Poland, because he was easily manipulatable. He was submissive. He was, that was perfect. And this is the connection.
Yeah. I mean, perfect
Perfect
person.
candidate.
Perfect person you can.
And now we get exactly. And now we have, in the background of all this, we have the Polish Church and John Paul II. Okay, and this is where it all starts. And of course, I mean, it's a beggar's belief that John Paul II was, was accidental. That it's a coincidence that a Polish conservative, anti-communist priest, okay, high-ranking priest, becomes a pope. Okay, I mean, that it's a coincidence. It's a beggar's belief. I mean, obviously, this was a political decision on the part of the.
So he was definitely groomed for the job.
Probably.
Because the Vatican has always been a
very shady place.
To say that the Vatican has been a reactionary force in the world is a bit of an understatement.
Yeah, that's true. That's very mildly put. Yeah, of course. But look, so he becomes a pope in 1980 something. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact year. And of course, he strengthens the anti-communist movements, okay? And all around the world, not only in Poland, but in Poland in particular, because Poland and Hungary were maybe two places where there was some kind of, because of the circumstances, okay, there in those two countries, there was an authentic sentiment against communism and maybe in favor of capitalism in this society, in those two societies. Otherwise, there wasn't, and it did translate into some kind of institutional opposition, like solidarity and other stuff. And by the way, like some of the people that are present in politics today, they of course claim how they were repressed before 1989, how they were repressed. And Viktor Orban, the prime minister of Hungary, he for example complains how he was repressed, okay, under the communist regime. Well, when I look at his record as a prime minister or as a politician in Hungary, I come to think that he should have been repressed. That made a lot of sense to repress him, because look at him now. He's not repressed, and do you see what's happening? It's
typical right-wing bullies. Like, you're the bully, yet you're the one that claims that you're you're oppressed.
No, but
cultural Marxists.
So what I'm trying to say is that it's like John Paul II was in the background of the whole of this, but it kind of took the Polish struggle to international level. This is how solidarity and the most reactionary elements in solidarity were able to secure funding, were able to do all kinds of things. So look, to some extent, I would say I maybe 50-50. I don't know. I don't want to argue about the math of it, but let's say to some extent it was a genuine labor movement that represented the political emotion of the the majority of the Polish society. Okay, but on the other hand, and I don't know, some part of it was something like a colorful revolution thing. Okay, so it was, I
So
would say it was
both.
50-50. Yeah. And before it became a full-fledged colorful revolution, then the martial law came and the destruction of solidarity and its decomposition. So John Paul II is active, and of course it gives the Polish Church a lot of kind of it boosts its
Credibility.
morale, so to say. Okay, so they feel much more confident, and they start making, they're looking for ways to make their imprint now on the things before the whole political process starts, so that they can secure their place at what later was was named the Round Table. I mean, of course, they did not know at the time, maybe in 1986 or 7, that there's going to be a round table. But at the process, or at the, they wanted to secure their place when and where things were going to be happening. So that's the kind of thing they also that's the kind of thing that they were looking for. Okay, to make sure that they will also be present there and that they can also be part of the decision making. And of course, what they did, I don't know whether it was in agreement, probably yes, with John Paul II. They launched a hysterical campaign against abortion at the end of 1987, because in the Polish People's Republic, abortion was free and available pretty much for pretty much all the time after 1956 or 1956, after Stalin died, because he had some kind of he wasn't very, I don't know, like abortion was somehow not a very appreciated thing. Okay, so
Interesting. All right.
yeah, I don't quite understand why. Like, what were the dynamics of it? I know abortion was introduced right after the revolution. The first stages of the revolution, October Revolution, I mean, were completed in Russia, and then it was banned in I don't know, in the 30s or 40s. But under the thumb of Stalin already. But I
Okay.
don't know the details of that, so I don't want to go into that. But anyway, the abortion was free and available and safe and secure and la la la. And then, for lack of a better idea, the Polish Catholic Church starts hysterically screaming at the top of their lungs about this and how it has to all go, and how it's immoral and how it's stupid and how it's against family, how it's against, all the
Yeah.
right wing typical talking points, right?
Yeah.
So that's this, and this hysteria, other hysterical approaches, and John Paul II created again the artificial, and of course the popular sentiment, because Polish are pretty religious. All that created the impression that the church is very strong. So they did invite it to the round table, and it was part of the entire circus, because it really was a circus. It was a kind of stage spectacle. Like, I'm talking about the round table talks. They were held, that's true, and many things were concluded there, and they were even written down, all those conclusions, and that was it. Afterwards, no one even looked at what was agreed around the round table. The real agreements have happened around around smaller tables that were not public, and it was an agreement mostly between the military secret service and the controlled opposition. And of course, at the time already, it was agreed, or maybe it was done in to an extent in conjunction with the Americans, and so on and so forth. And of course with the Soviets, like, in a way,
Of the brutal, of basically the brutal transition that
yeah,
Poland and Eastern Europe
yeah,
experienced
exactly,
today,
exactly.
of just yeah,
Yeah. So look, I mean, this is the role,
unregulated
and this is the
markets,
role of John
privatization.
Paul II up until 1989, and then his role is much worse in Poland. Okay, because before 1989, he also crushed the leftist movements in the Catholic leftist movements in Latin America. I can't
Yep,
remember
yep.
what they're called, liberation
Yeah,
theology or
liberation
something. Yeah,
theology. Yeah.
exactly, right.
he threw
Yeah,
out
so he
Romero under the
crushed
bus.
that. He crushed this, and he was very reactionary, and he was, against contraception in Africa, despite the fact that AIDS was an epidemic at the time, and so on and so forth. Okay, like a typical conservative, thick-headed thug. That's what he was.
Yeah,
But after 1989, of course, it all didn't stop. On the contrary, like the influence of the church was growing, and he John Paul II was one of the people making sure that it does grow, and that particularly the fundamentalist wing of the church can also easily and stably and steadily grow. And that was very important because without John Paul II, and without the constant prizing of John Paul II, without constant propaganda, without all those things, and without the acceptance on the part of the of uh, of the former communists, okay, or whatever, socialists, the people that used to be in power before 1989, without their consent, without their acknowledgement that, oh yes, the church is here, and we have to discuss with them because they are strong, and they have a lot of authority, or enjoy a lot of authority and stuff like that. So without all those things, that probably we wouldn't have gone that far, and we wouldn't be in this dark place where we are today, because that's to a large extent thanks to the Catholic Church. Because uh, you know without John Paul II, and without all those other factors, I think it would be very difficult to win that cultural war that they've started in 1987. And again, I think that it makes sense to make a point here that the right wing, they like to say that they like to speak about the left in terms of, oh, those people want cultural war. No, it's not us. It's you guys who want cultural war. We just
oh
want
yeah,
normal, regular, processes, historical processes to take place, like modernity and stuff like. This is what we want. It's you who wage, and your agents, and your churches, and your bishops, and your whatever fascistic or clero-fascistic organizations. You do that. And we had abortion, now we don't have abortion, okay, and it's because of you guys, and you were so effective in Poland that by 1993 we banned abortion, okay, in Poland. 1993, not now, not last year. That was just a cherry on the cake, but because
exactly.
they yeah, but but they've made that decision was taken long, long, long time ago. So uh, without John Paul II, I don't think it would have been possible. Like, of course, it's my speculation, but I don't think they would have the audacity and the strength and all the rest of it. So, and also, people, the understanding of people, the people's understanding of and perception of reality was still in the beginning of the 90s, and actually throughout the 90s, I would argue, still pretty uh, modern and pretty socialistic, okay, to a certain extent, because this ideology was still there, and the society was still pretty equal. There were all those things that create the cultural pathologies. They were still not in place yet. Okay, I mean, it had to. You needed time in
Yeah,
order to be able to you needed to crush the sense of community. You needed to crush the sense of collective action. You needed to combat all those notions, and it only happened, I would argue, in the 21st century, after this avalanche of propaganda and constant bombardment with all kinds of right-wing philosophical, sociological notions, and ideological, most of all, of course, that people finally, they kind of gave up. They accepted that. And this is when we start getting problems like, law and justice, Catholic fundamentalism, and, all the rest of it,
the
right?
Civic Party
Before,
of Donald Tusk.
excuse me, yeah, you're right. I should clarify that for the viewers, that law and justice is the Catholic fundamentalist party that is referred by some people as proto-fascistic. I don't think it's correct, but anyway, it's an extremist a political organization, and we do have a lot of problems because of that. I've spoken about them not once on your show and on our shows on the Barricade and so on and so forth. So uh, so look, they the society kept reacting in a very healthy way. to those reactionary nonsense, to this reactionary, BS basically. Okay, so they rejected it, and they thought, like the majority of the society thought that sexual education in schools, it makes sense, that contraception makes sense, that abortion should be free, that all those stuff, all those things. And it was gradually changing. It was gradually losing thrust and dynamic and so on and so forth. And again, I would argue it's it's because of the left that had capitulated at the time, okay, to the new order, to the clergy, to neoliberalism. And they thought, we're not going to defend anyone. We're not going to defend women. We're not going to defend gay people. We're not going to defend the workers. We're not going to do any of the things that we should be doing. Okay.
You think
and
that
I thought,
so you think whatever form of of left institution, left grassroots left parties in Poland and Eastern Europe, you also blame them for the kind of mess we're in, because you think because from what you're saying, they didn't do enough to push back against all of these rival far right groups, libertarian groups that were coming about.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm saying. And at the time, the only institutional left was really the Democratic Left Alliance, which was the rebranded United Polish Workers' Party, which used to. So from whatever communists, as they are referred to, they never referred. I mean, they hardly referred to themselves that way, really. And communism in Poland wasn't a very how to say this, the kind of, they didn't use it in their jargon. They avoided it. They refrained from using it. Whereas in Bulgaria or in other countries, that was totally okay, or in the Soviet Union for that matter, of course. Well, anyway, what I'm trying to say, that this was the only left, and because it was the left that actually took part in establishing the new order and making sure that they also can be an important player there, not so much politically, because they didn't care about that anymore. They've had like 50 years behind them of political control over the country, but they wanted to make sure that they're going to have their own billionaires, they're going to have their own millionaires, they're going to have their own influential people, particularly Secret Service officers, those that were most able, present in the business, present in all the most, in the judiciary, in journalism, all those places. So they just wanted to make sure that they're going to have a comfy life. Okay, after 19.
Yeah, I was actually just going to ask a follow-up question. I'm pretty sure some people could have warned these people, do not make deals with these devils. But I assume they probably thought, well, you know what? They're not going to destroy us that bad. We're still going to keep a little bit of our social fabric. The free market, they're not going to, completely, I don't know, kill anything that moves, I guess. But
there were some people that even in the 80s, which was, that was a terrible decade for Poland, by the way. But there were people in the Polish United Workers' Party that were ideologically there, that were there for ideological reasons, and that were thinking that you can actually, transform maybe the party and stuff like that. And I'm sure, by the way, that to a large extent those instincts were correct. I mean, probably if I were an adult person at that time and interested in politics and stuff like that, I would have done the same. Because where would you go if you want to, have influence in politics in a one-party system? You go to the one party, right?
Yeah.
And of course, the problem with that one party was also that this was the only way to make a career, which was, and it's very problematic. And for example, the Chinese, they understood that. That's why they give you a lot of business opportunities today. Okay, I mean, if you want to have a career, you don't have to be a member of the party and pretend that you're obedient, whatever, communist activist and stuff like that. You don't have to do that. You can just set up your own business, and you can be very successful in China today. Okay, that's why that's why the party life, okay, in China is much healthier than it used to be, like in comparison with the life of the Polish United Workers' Party or many other parties.
Yeah.
So, and that's a very serious. I think it's a very important element, okay, in the general system in China that makes things much healthier there, and so on and so forth. But those people, those the members and the leading members, particularly of the Polish United Workers' Party, they really had nothing to lose. I mean, someone could have warned them. Okay, so maybe there were some debates, even critical debates within the party ranks about where are we going, what are we doing, and stuff like that. But the majority of them didn't care. The majority of them went like, well, what do we got to lose? I mean, I don't know their words. I mean, I was never invited to those meetings. They were not public, but that's how I can imagine the whole thing unfolded. Like, what do we got to lose? The West is pressuring. The Soviet Union is obviously falling apart, or I don't know, something major is happening there. And well, I mean, the people aren't going to defend us. Okay, so what do we do? We just let it go. But before we let go, we make sure that the big part of the cake is in our hands. And that was it. Okay, so that's why I think I said it during our previous conversation, that 50% of what happened in 1989 was treason, and the other 50% was counter-revolution. That's how I see.
Unbelievable.
That's how I see it. So
and
yeah,
now, yeah, go on.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that in this entire construction, the expat communities were important, but not so much, because the Polish, because you referred in our previous conversation to the Ukrainian National Congress, or whatever they are called there, and that they are full of former Nazi leaders, officers, stuff like that. Yeah,
they were founded by former they were founded by runaway Nazi war criminals. Okay. How much of those descendants are still there? That I can't say, but what is painfully clear is that when you go on some of their websites, or when you look at some of their like news conferences or like festivals when they're celebrating Ukrainian culture, or it could be Estonian culture, but there's always like pictures of those Nazi.
I get it, but also what is important here is that it obviously varies from country to country, because the Poland does not really have any history of Nazi organizations here. Okay, I mean, except for somewhere on the fringes of the political life, but not really. So we don't have that. Okay, I mean, we have a lot of we had a lot of anti-Semites. We had a lot of crazy right-wingers. We had a lot of people who have abhorring views, who have had abhorring views, and they did travel to America, and they did travel to Canada, and they did emigrate there, and so on. And I'm sure until today, the Polish community in the United States, for example, is very large. Okay, and it. It's predominantly right wing, and it supported Trump and so on and so forth, and so but I don't feel that there was any major action or on their part that would have influenced in any major way, meaningful way, the process of the restoration of capitalism in Poland, even stretching it back to the 1980s. I think that they were more important maybe after 1989, because many of those people that became successful businessmen in the United States, they came here and they imported a lot of pathological culture, because it is a kind of the Polish community in the United States, with some noble exceptions, of course, is it's a conglomeration of people who have very weird ideas about Poland, and on the other hand, have adopted a lot of bad elements of the American commercial culture. It's a bit like I like to compare it to, for example, working, and I do have an experience. I have such an experience. I have had such an experience in the past. It's like working in a state-owned company which is trying desperately to look like an international modern corporation. So you get the mix of all the most pathological elements, like bureaucratic.
I always loved going to a fairly affluent school like the one I went to, the International School of Brussels. I always thought it was very bizarre when I would meet people from Latin people from Latin America who, they hate communism, they hate anything which is to the left of Jeremy Corbyn, basically. And yet, at the same time, you think to yourself, okay, so you think capitalism is like the end all be all, and yet your parents work as diplomats for the current government that's actually paying your salaries. Go figure that one out.
Yeah. You're right. So anyway, this Polish community in the United States and in Canada, I think they hold. I mean, in terms of their convictions, moral, political, and stuff like that, I think it's terrible. The situation's terrible. But on the other hand, I'm not aware of any influence that they would have had in the 80s or in the beginning of the 90s.
But you would say it's more nowadays, late 90s, going into this sort of the sort of dark period in which Poland is in, where those expat communities are playing more of an active reactionary role in the state of.
I think they are playing more of an active, or they could be playing more of an active role. I'm not really following that very closely, but I think it rather correlates with the attempts on the part of the conservative circles in America to influence the political process in Europe, and they are just using them or the Polish whatever right-wing activists that belong to those expat communities are kind of, either they're being used by those whatever Christian organizations, Christian fundamentalist organizations in America, or people like Steve Bannon, and so, because they like their views, or it could just be that the other way around, like the Protestant radicals and the I don't know, Steve Bannons of America, they are using those people in order to implement some of their whatever ideas here on the ground, because it's easier to do that through such a representation than just going there by yourself and saying that, look, I represent whatever Protestant fascist movement, and I just want to mess up everything here, and I want to replace the Catholic Church or stuff like that. So I think that this is how it could potentially look like.
Actually, are you familiar with an organization? Actually, let me quickly Google it so I don't butcher the name. Sec. Yeah, are you familiar with an organization which is called, which is based in America, called the Victims? Oh wait, here it is. The Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Are you familiar with that organization by any chance?
It rings a bell, but I don't know. But I'm sure it's just one of the propaganda centers where they produce all. But I'm really not impressed by that anymore. I mean, I've seen that in Bulgaria to 3 times stronger than in Poland, 5 times stronger than in Poland. Okay, and it's like we have been bombarded with all kinds of right-wing nonsense, anti-communist propaganda, and anti-leftist notions and stuff for the last 30 years. I mean, it doesn't make an impression. Okay, in other center, well, sure, just go ahead and reproduce all those things, and then I don't think it really makes much of an impression anymore on anyone, really. It's just by the force of inertia, I would say that those people, because when you set up an organization that's supposed to fight communism in Poland, whatever, right? But let's say you have an organization, an anti-communist organization in Poland. There are no communists in Poland except for a few, okay? A handful of people. I know all of them, okay? So obviously this organization has to make up reasons for its own existence, okay? So even if it stops being useful anymore because the general atmosphere has changed and the gear has been shifted, then they will still produce evidence in order to be able to sustain themselves and to receive money and so on and so forth. So I would say that this is part of this mechanism, rather. I mean, people, the established bureaucracy, the anti-communist bureaucracy, okay, it requires money, and it will give you all kinds of reasons. The most I would say modern, most fashionable thing now is cultural Marxism.
But how difficult is it for some on the left, such as yourself, who don't want to completely purge some of the positive legacies of communism, because I'm sure you probably get into very heated discussions with with people who identify themselves as left, but they sometimes go through these mental gymnastics like, I'm of the left of Eastern Europe, but I'm not of that communist left. So so how difficult is it for someone like you when you're trying to have a dialogue with them and figuring out how we can strengthen the left and get rid of all of this right-wing bullshit which came about from the grassroots and was also kind of like shot into the country by the by the Reagan cult followers. So how difficult is it for you sometimes to have these dialogues with some of the people who with some of those people of the left, but they want to also but they also want to show I'm a good lefty by punching left and wanting to completely erase some of the positives that came about through the communist period?
Well, I wish I had an answer to that. Unfortunately, for many years now, I have been, how to say that? I'm not a very likable personality on the Polish left, okay? And precisely because I just don't like their weird acrobatics, which the bottom line is always, we're against communism, we're against whatever the People's Republic, we're against the dictatorial, brutal regime before 1989, stuff like that. And because I'm rather, I'm not part of their culture. In a way, when I go somewhere, I don't apologize to the Polish People's Republic. I don't apologize for Joe Stalin. I don't apologize for Mao Zedong. I don't apologize for anything that I don't agree with or that I think was a huge mistake, and sometimes at a great human cost. Okay, made throughout the history of socialism and socialist states and so on and so forth. Okay, and I'm also not one of those who are going to just do what many like to do on the left, not only in Eastern Europe but in Western Europe. Oh no, but the Soviet Union wasn't socialist because it wasn't democratic. Like those cheap kind of shying away from responsibility and kind of like, come on, guys.
Yeah, I know. I know. I mean, sorry to interrupt, but it kind of reminds me of conversations on China. Like, we still to this day have like people who say, "Oh, China's not really like a communist state because it's not really the workers that are doing that. They've adopted all these free market reforms. They've allowed like cheap labor." And like, I remember having a very long conversation with Jay Watts of the Communist Party of Canada, and it's like, and for me, it's just like, you know what, guys, who gives a shit? I mean, like, right now, capitalism is ruling supreme. It's trying to start a very dangerous game of chicken, a new Cold War with China, which could accidentally start like a nuclear war. And right now, what do we see across Eastern Europe, and what do we even see even in the US, the UK, and so forth? It's the far right becoming the new middle now, and like at some point it's like, and one of these days I'm definitely going to have you on for this conversation. But we need to have a conversation with some on the left, and the conversation needs to be, how can we move beyond anti-communism? Because I personally think we need to move beyond the whole anti-communism stuff. And I'm not saying that to minimize some of the people who.
No, but let's just not go into that even. Okay, look, how am I responsible for what Joe Stalin did? I was born long after he died. Okay, like, how can you even blame me for this? Okay, and if you ask me whether I support totalitarian model of government that Joe Stalin did implement, of course I don't support. I think it was a great mistake. Okay, and what else am I supposed to say? Like, why do I have to constantly go there and and you know and sort of pretend that I'm really sorry for all those people that had that had been oppressed by Mao Zedong or John sorry, John Paul II. Yeah,
because
I'm really sorry for those by the
yeah.
way. But Joe Stalin and like, come on, guys. Like, I've stated that many times that I don't agree with certain moments in the history of this, socialist states, socialist parties, communist internationals, and I don't agree even today, because we do have tons of organizations, by the way, globally, which like to call themselves socialist internationals and so on and so forth and stuff like that. And I think altogether most of them are a mistake. Okay, their positions, their tactics, their strategies, and all the rest of it. So, like, if I can freely be critical of certain elements on the left globally today, then I can legitimately be critical against certain elements of the history of the left, okay, parties, states, governments, and so on and so forth. And at the same time, I don't take any responsibility for whatever Marxist International is doing in London or in Washington or in Paris or whatever. I don't take responsibility, even if they kill someone or if they, if they take
Because what
power
it is
tomorrow.
because when the Western left does that, and I think it's a shame that in Eastern Europe, I assume I think because some of them are born a generation after the Cold War, and now they start to adopt a lot of the a lot of these a lot of this anti-communist left bullshit, which comes from the West. So we can praise Bernie Sanders, although we have to be very critical of Hugo Chavez. We can praise Jeremy Corbyn, but we can't. But we can't praise
Who decides that? That's what I want to ask. Who decides this?
And I think
I don't agree anyone will decide it for me. I will decide
and
what
it is, and what it is basically we're engaging in just self McCarthyism. We're engaging in self McCarthyism, where if somebody where if some right wing
self-red baiting,
where if some right wing douchebag comes and attack us, we go, and say, have you now or have you ever been a communist? Like, basically, the reaction, is like, oh, no, I'm not that kind of a lefty. And I think we just need to move beyond that. And kind of like what you were saying, I do not apologize for for the wrongs that other people in the movement have made, because it's like asking a Muslim, it's like asking like a random Muslim, do you apologize for 9/11? Do you apologize for this suicide attack and that suicide attack? When the person's like, dude, they don't represent me, like, not in my name, how can you stop lumping me and my community with with those
But I just want to say that this is not even political. I mean, it's a question of basic reason. Okay, I mean, we seem to be like, over the last 10 or 15 years, we have been departing from reason very serious, like at a very rapid pace. Okay, and this is the consequence of it, because, I mean, look, let alone that it does have some ideological implications and so on and so forth. But look, but on a very logical level, you want to look at it logically, and looking at it logically will bring you inevitably, if you don't lie to yourself, if you do that in good faith, okay, it will lead you to the conclusion, for example, that the people's republics of the Eastern Bloc, they did not have to be destroyed. They could have been reformed, right? And no one can convince me. And if someone, tries to convince me, then I will easily discuss them out of this concept that they had to be destroyed because they were like a rotten, house that, would, the fundaments even not holding anything. The story that that I'm sure many of our viewers encountered not once. So, like, and again, then, but what about Joe Stalin? This is like, what about Joe Stalin? Well, I don't know about what about you? Brought up the question. You answer like, why do you want to speak about Joe Stalin? Joe Stalin's been dead for decades now. Like, why do we speak about Joe Stalin? Okay, like, is anyone have you actually seen anyone meaningful on the like any important? Well, I don't know, not even important, but influential or having any kind of say on the left that would go and go out and publicly state a position that I want to be the next Joe Stalin. I want to build concentration camps. I want to build gulags. I want to, exterminate all my political opponents. I want to torture people. I want to have the KGB and the NKVD in place. I would like, who does this? Why do we have to? So my suggestion is, guys, on the left, take it easy, all right? Take a deep breath. Stop saying all those things that Soviet Union wasn't socialist or that China isn't so. Like, okay, it's not maybe socialist in the very classical form, okay? Because the working class arguably doesn't have power there to the extent that we would like to see this.
Yeah.
But the working class in China and the working class in the Soviet Union had much more power and influence than they have now. So let's not, trick ourselves into this right-wing propaganda that it all never worked. That's not true. There were mistakes made. Very bad mistakes were made, and we should acknowledge and discuss them. And my problem with the left is that no one moved their little finger over the last 30 years to carefully analyze, okay, what was wrong about the Soviet system, what was dysfunctional about the Soviet system, and what was good about it. Okay,
Yeah.
No one has that. I've seen a multitude of PhD, what do you call dissertations, right? About whatever small nuance, here and there, and so on and so forth. And now, in all those left-wing academics, with all due respect to academics, all the petty things were analyzed that are of interest for such amount of people all over the world, okay? And they have done nothing for the movement, to build the movement, to create cadres, to educate leadership. And now random activists, okay, today are doing this job. And they don't have PhDs, okay? So this is what the left hasn't done. And because they haven't done this, they're lacking confidence. And they just cannot go and confront a regular right-winger who, a random right-winger who's going to go and tell them about Joe Stalin, about whatever Gulag, about so on, the bread lines and stuff like that. And if you were educated to any extent, okay, you would know that all those arguments are pure lab clean BS. What bread lines? Okay, in the 80s in Poland, we had bread lines. That's true. And not only bread lines, we had other lines as well. Sure, since the entire nation was on strike, we had, shortages of things. Logical. You don't have to be a Marxist to understand this. That kind of stuff, right? And then, but dictatorship in China. Okay, sure, dictatorship in China. Well, how about someone gives China a chance? Because I can assure you that if tomorrow they introduce any kind of, all those democratic mechanisms that the Western liberals are praising so much, they'd be gone like this, just because everybody's against them.
And in fact, that sort of leads to the last topic I wanted to talk to you about, which is, I think, and we've talked about this many times, off the air, and and this kind of goes back into to these sort of like these sort of like these sort of expat communities, which is well, the expat communities play a part. I think the expat communities play a part, but it goes into the fact that maybe, and I think this this might be a bit of a controversial position to take, but can the West just not intervene anywhere? And those Western lefties, the Western do-gooders, I know you guys, I know you guys are good people, and you think that you're helping the people of Belarus out, or you want to help out, the people of like Hong Kong and whatever. But can you just sit this one out, please? Because if you look at Libya, you look at Iraq, you look at you even look at like Haiti, and now of course and I'll have you back on the show in the future to talk about Cuba. But I completely agree with you. If it, I the Western left, a lot of times they end up becoming bizarre partners in crime with imperialism. They have these bizarre
and they don't realize that.
They have these bizarre imperial blind spots where the moment they see a bunch of people protesting in Tunisia, in Libya, oh, there's a revolution happening, and then they project their Trotskyism or whatever left movement they believe they're a part of onto these things, and it's like, dude, that's not even happening right now.
Yeah,
like,
that's true. That's true. But there's more to that. I mean, there's so much ignorance on the left, and that's something we should be really straightforward about, because otherwise we're never going to be able to combat it. There's so much ignorance, because
not just about China, but about Eastern.
I would say about the concept, the very concept of the left. Okay, because after let's say after the fall of the Soviet Union, although I don't like this cliche, but let's just use it for the sake of that conversation. Yeah. And after the fall of the social democracies, Western social democracies, with the coming of Blair and Schröder and I forgot the French guy. Anyway, so
Mitterrand.
No, Mitterrand. No, the one later. He was a former Trotskyist, by the way. I forgot his name.
I could be Jospin, Lionel.
Jospin. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Thank you. So look, after those two projects, the two biggest major flagship projects of the international left failed. Okay. And I don't want to go again into what was the reason, but they ceased to exist or to function the way we expected.
Western, you're talking about like the Western Social Democrat type
and the Soviet Union. I'm talking about those two projects basically. Yeah. So once it collapsed, then a responsible person, a responsible activist, a responsible philosopher, a responsible academic, a responsible journalist, a responsible commentator, scratches their heads and thinks like, come on guys, well, we got to figure it out. What went wrong here? And because no one did this, and because it was very difficult to define yourself as a left-wing person, because how do you define it? In the past, you were able to define yourself as a social democrat or a communist or whatever, Stalinist or whatever you wanted to call it, like a person sympathetic to the Soviet Union. Now, what are you? So, we went into this infantile, completely meaningless imagination, like imaginatory left, like, oh, the left are those people who are nice and sympathetic and who create a lot of safe spaces, and they appreciate the other, and they are open-minded, and when they see people protesting, their heart goes out immediately, and they go. So like, this is not left-wing attitude. This is a childish, infantile nonsense, okay, which devoids an adult person of dignity when they do this. Okay, so when there is a protest, a political person, regardless of on which side of the spectrum they are on, they analyze the situation, they draw conclusions, speak to people, learn about that. You don't just go and support any demonstration just because some people are demonstrating about something. Okay, and this was this is like a basic ABC. Like, really, you don't have to be a Marxist cadre to know how to handle this kind of situation. Okay, protests in Belarus, legitimate grief. Protests in Cuba, legitimate grief. But again, I'm going to support the protest. I'm going to support some of the demands of the protests, maybe. Okay, but am I going to support like a bunch of people who are going to try and topple Fidel Castro, now his brother, or whatever, for the 657th time? Am I really going to support that? And am I really going to support people who like the expats, like you want to talk about the expat community, the Cuban expats in America are probably the most toxic expat community that I can think of at the moment. All right,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
and you
exactly.
can see that, you can see people, and it's all over the internet. Like they're gonna tell you, but the 60 years old, 60 years long blockade of Cuba is good. Okay, they're gonna say this openly.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
they're gonna. You can see it all over the internet because the blockade
oh
is
my,
good. Yeah,
I've almost been afraid to like turn on like like Twitter or go on Facebook and see like what kind of like nonsense is like being spoken about like Cuba. Like I already got like a bit of a taste of it. Like there's a pop singer like Camila Cabello, and like I was like reading like her tweets, Gloria Estefan's tweets, Jay Balvin's tweets on what's going on in Cuba, and I just go to myself, I'm like, oh Jesus,
yeah,
please
yeah, yeah,
save
yeah.
me,
So,
like.
but I want to say that you're gonna
Like
point this.
SOS, Cuba needs our help. There's shortages of like medicine, stuff like that, and I think to myself, I like, guys, if there's shortage of medicines, that's because your government
Yeah, exactly. Lift the
has
blockade.
been doing economic terrorism on this country because they can't get over the fact that like you lost this time around. Like it's
Yeah, 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 yeah.
unbelievable.
But look, this is exactly the point, and it speaks to what I said earlier about like bread lines in the 80s in Poland. Well, yeah, there were bread. There's a reason for that. And again, food shortages or whatever other medicine shortages in Cuba. Well, guys, there's a reason for that again. And of course, I understand the sentiment. Like I mean, come on, the government is supposed to do something regardless of the blockade and so on and so forth. I mean, they are the government, they have to do things, and I understand that, but I'm not going to support it to the extent where they say that the blockade is good, and that kind of stuff. But more
Yeah.
when you point it out to a random leftist in Poland or in many other countries, instead of getting an immediate and logical reaction, which is of course like of course this is bullshit, okay, which is a logical, not a political, it's a logical reaction to that. No, you're gonna get like, yes, but the dictatorship. Like, come on, guys, dictatorship. What are you
Well, I
even
mean,
talking about?
well, I mean,
Everybody supports
well,
this.
I
This
mean,
government has been supporting it for the last 50 years. We're talking now about food shortages and how they can be taken care of, how this problem could be addressed. Well, it could be addressed by lifting the blockade. And this is the thing, okay? That's the way to go. And again, this is the logical way to go. And the left refuses to apply basic logic to basic facts. And this is, of course, the result of the ongoing deepening of the ignorance of the left.
well, it reminds me so much of Syria, and going back to China. You've had so many you've had so many journalists, ones that also speak Arabic, like Manar Adli, Rania Khalek, and others who who keep saying to people, guys, that Syrian revolution that you're all so hot about, look at who the West is funding. ISIS did not come out of a vacuum. It's the West supporting them, and there is no revolution going on. This is a counter-revolution. This is just basic Western imperialism 101. And still to this day, there are so many people who refuse to acknowledge that what happened in Syria was just another Iraq.
Exactly.
And in Afghanistan, you had the Anna Kasparian who throws this stupid fits like flicking off Aaron Matze, who's at. I mean, I don't even want to give those people that much, that much credit. But then you go to China, and I remember, I organized a debate on the whole, this whole Uyghur situation, so forth. And I was saying, and I was saying to the person, Morgana, I was like, Morgana, given the fact that the Western powers to be always lie, they always exploit legitimate grievances, or they just make up BS as it goes along for whatever is their next target. And given the National Endowment of Democracy, given its history, and given all of these Uyghur rights groups that are saying that there's a genocide going on, all these Hong Kong, protests are all back to the teats by the National Endowment of Democracy. Don't you think that we should not be supporting these allegations? We should not be supporting these protests? And the fact that she could just say, yeah, well, I know that mistakes were made in the past, But this time around, the target country is guilty of whatever, and we need to do something. And again, I'm still to this day taken aback by a response like that, because it's like I just don't know how to even respond to that. I don't know how to wrap my head around it, because it just goes to show, like, wow, the anti-imperialist movement and the broader left movement, there's so much we need to do to combat these propaganda and these people who just have these imperial blind spots. And it's harsh to say it, but there are so many people in the West, and it's a shame that Eastern Europe is also turning in this direction, who just have these imperial blind spots and are, and it's a pity, but it just goes to show that we really need to have, we really need to have these conversations, which those people always seem to want to avoid, because it's always like
but this is exactly the thing. I mean, we should confront that kind of views, and we should be prepared, at least, to confront and right-wing and left-wing, all kinds of pathological views, because this is our strength. Okay, like our strength at the moment, at least, because we cannot really, at the moment, at least I don't see that happening anytime soon in Poland, like, creating a romantic vision where we're going to mobilize and inspire a lot of people. But at least, we're able to discuss, and we're able to demonstrate that we're right. Okay.
Yeah.
And that, anyone who comes to discuss the Uyghur issue with me, the first thing is, I will only accept this discussion if they produce any evidence, because so far I don't really know of any evidence that would prove that there's a genocide going on. I am prepared to accept the notion that there is some repression going on in that region.
Yeah.
But no genocide. Like, there's no evidence of this. All right. So I would say that the problem is really that once you step out of the box, you will lose the attention of the media. You will lose, as a left-wing politician, I mean, you will lose the attention of whatever, centers, PR centers, power centers, foundations or NGOs or whatever, right? Once you do this, then you're going to be put, in a different area, basically. Yeah. And many people don't want to do that because they don't see a point in doing that, because they have been bureaucrats for the whatever amount of decades or years, and that's okay. What I don't understand is why people who are fresh activists subscribe to this, because I am liberated of all that nonsense. So for me, life is, you ask me whether it's difficult or not to discuss it with lefties and stuff. No, it's very easy, because I don't have to apologize. I don't have to care about whether I mentioned this or that, whether I phrased this or that correctly, or whether I use the proper pronoun or whatever. And look, I'm in a very good position, because I run my own business together with other comrades from Bulgaria and Romania. I can't be cancelled. I can't be fired. So I can say what I want and what I like. And for me, it's not difficult at all. I think it's difficult for them, and particularly difficult for those people who enter, activism, left-wing activism, and they enter with this kind of very heavy culture. I mean, do you even realize sometimes how difficult it's got to be able to constantly defend something that you feel was also responsible for, I don't know, the deaths of millions of people or whatever, because Joe Stalin or because someone else? Like, I think it's a very heavy load to carry all the time. I mean, I just don't understand, why would you do this? Like, go there and say what you think about things, regardless of whether Joe Stalin had the same idea about this particular thing. Like, this is like this weird discussion about vegetarians. Like, Hitler was a vegetarian. Like, so what? Like, or someone would tell. I remember like when I spoke about when I discussed issues related to family and the approach of the left wing towards the ideological approach towards family, which I think is fundamentally wrong today. by the way. And you know, someone attacked me, okay, by saying, "But you sound like Jordan Peterson," which is like, first of all, I don't know what Jordan Peterson sounds like, and look, even Jordan Peterson has the right to be right on something, okay? I mean, even if we don't like someone, it doesn't mean that he has to be all the time wrong. Even a broken clock is, shows the correct time twice a day, okay? So
Yeah,
all
which,
the more.
Yeah,
So this
I know
is
exactly
guilt
what you
by
mean.
association, guilt by all kind. It's just total nonsense. And I think that unfortunately we're going even deeper into that because most people, in my opinion at least, that's my observation, do not realize how harmful the thing the Russiagate thing was for the entire left and for everyone really on the political progressive whatever the political the progressives in general, how hurtful it was. I mean, people don't realize this until today because it hurt. It was like the elevation of conspiracy theories to a whole new level. Okay, like now conspiracy theories are completely totally legit, and the kind of notion of guilt by association is something that everyone accepts. Okay, oh, like you sound like Putin or you sound like Russian propaganda, you're written off, thank you, not deplatformed, I don't want to talk to you. That's like, let's move on, right? And this is something which makes makes it much easier to shut our mouths. Okay, and the departure from reason deepens even further because there's nothing logical in Russiagate. Okay, and anyone now who wants to say anything which is true and correct and a logical conclusion about international relations can always be easily blamed. Oh yeah, but Putin, yeah, please, thank you, goodbye. No, we're not talking to you, right? So this is something that the process of pathologization, if that's a word, I mean, it deepens. Okay, it's constant, and the left doesn't seem to care. I mean, you can even hear leftists here and there saying like, this Russiagate thing and the Syria thing, that doesn't sound good, and like the destruction of Libya and but then they will never say that officially because they are afraid they're going to be canceled, they're going to be deplatformed, they're going to all kinds of other things are going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And this is why I think that ignorance and cowardice are two things that we immediately have to I mean, not immediately, but what we have to immediately address, but we have to combat with all the forces available on the board, like with anyone who's on board against ignorance and against cowardice. Like the left cannot be ignorant and it cannot act cowardly if it's to mean anything, unless, of course, we want to call the whole business with socialism and transition and better future and another world is possible off. And we just say, but let's be honest about it then. We just want to run our own little show. Okay?
Exactly.
And if you want to run your own little show, then please run this show, but try to be quiet because it's really irritating. Like once you come across whatever you produce.
Exactly. No, I mean, I completely agree with you because, I mean, because at some point, I know, and sometimes I even experience this. It's not nice when you have to sometimes confront family and friends or people you consider comrades on pushing back against the new Cold War with China or pushing back against Russiagate and so forth. But we need to do it. We need to push back against this. And if those people want to continue having their imperial blind spots and they and their main goal in life is to get a job at the Guardian or the BBC, or they want one of these nice cushy jobs. I mean, you've even once said there's not enough cushy jobs to fill them all.
No.
So at some point, we are going to have to. I think we need to confront people who are I think we need to confront people who are starting to jump the shark on, imperialism, or they want to be,
Yes.
or they want to be this white man's burden, whether it be in Eastern Europe, whether it be in Cuba. And I think we need to confront those people and say no, no, no. And
No,
we have to.
guys, you're wrong. You're wrong. That's what we have to keep telling. Like, guys, you are wrong. Like, your position is incorrect, and it's because A, B, C, and D. And let them respond. But no, they will not. They will tell you you're Putin's puppet or whatever, Xi's puppet, or you're paid by the Chinese or whatever, North Koreans, if you like, or something like that. So yeah, this is a problem, and that's why I referred to RussiaGate as this malice, because that allows them to do that, to do it. That allows them to basically on the basis of this completely made up thing, okay, to avoid any kind of serious discussion. And that I would say is the most dangerous element at the moment. And that's why I kept repeating that we're departing from reason, from the enlightenment, if you like, okay, from logic. Because if you apply any logic, okay, regardless of what your declared political convictions are, you will easily see that the major problem in international relations is not Moscow and not Beijing.
Yeah.
It's Washington. You will easily see that capitalism is a system that is obviously economically illogical and only benefits a few. You will easily see that. So the more people can see that now, thanks to the internet, thanks to the alternative media, thanks to YouTubers like yourself, thanks to all those things that are now available, through the technology that is popular now. So they have to intensify this, okay? They have to make sure, that, obviously, the Silicon Valley is trying to turn off parts of the internet. I don't know whether they will succeed. But on the other hand, those people whom we're talking about are trying to shut to make a large or a significant section of the public opinion just shut up, okay, and just ignore, like, pretend that they don't exist, because this is what the platforming really is. It's like a small child covering their eyes saying, I'm not here, I'm not here, I don't hear you, I can't see you, this is it. Like, and they call themselves politicians or activists or influencers or something like this. Come on, like, give me a break.
Exactly. And then the final thing to ask you, as as we wrap this up, because you're mentioning that in Eastern Europe it is difficult, for somebody such as yourself to have these, trying to have these rational conversations with fellow comrades. But do you think it'll ever get better, or it's not even a matter of that? It's just a matter of, like, what you're trying to do with your comrades in the Barricade, which I know that's, and I assume sometimes you do have your disagreements with certain contributors about historical events of the past and how to deal with current situations now. But do you think that will improve, sort of uniting the Eastern European left to push back against the the reign of terror, or it's just one of those things where it's just going to take a lot of time to really have a formidable left which really can push back against all the right-wing bullshit and hopefully gain power and
I'm not sure. It's difficult to answer that question because I could only speculate. At the moment, the situation is very bleak, and I don't see how a genuine left-wing movement oriented, politically towards the working class could emerge and could gain, some kind of thrust politically, or take power and stuff like that. And there are multiple reasons for this, but the bottom line is always the cowardice and ignorance. This is it always boils down to those two things. Like, we're too afraid to be radical. We're too stupid to be able to defend whatever the Soviet Union or the People's Republic of China. We're not aware of our historical legacy. We're using the language of the right wing. We are ashamed to use, the language that traditionally belongs to our discourse. We've given up largely on the notion of socialism. We have no idea of how such a transition, even if there are people who believe in better, in a better future, and a sustainable, uh, perspective for progress and prosperity. Okay, I don't think the majority of them really knows how to go there, how to get to that point. I mean, even the the classics, the left, the people whom we often refer to. I mean, starting from Marx and Engels, through Lenin, Luxemburg, whatever, like Trotsky and stuff. Even there, you have very little ideas about the transition, actually. Okay, so we had this 200 years to work on that, and we haven't worked it out to an extent that would be satisfactory. So, like, I mean, there are so many weaknesses. I just don't see how in Eastern Europe, where we're so badly crushed economically, and we just went through such a massive degradation. Okay, I don't see how it's going to happen soon, but perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps, like, when Lenin, right before the Bolshevik, right before the October Revolution, Lenin wrote an extensive article about how socialism isn't going to take root in Russia for the next 100 years. Okay, that was like literally 1 year or maybe a year and a half before the revolution actually occurred. So the reality can always can kind of surprise us with all kinds of developments, and we got to be ready. But again, like, when it comes to discussions, I don't think there are many discussions. In the first place, there aren't many discussions. I don't think anyone would be willing to confront me, like, of the people that I know. Okay, in the past there wasn't some intellectual life, and there were a lot of quarrels, even, if you like. But I think it's better to have quarrels than just to be silent and ignorant and stupid. But now at the moment I'm very pessimistic. I mean, I'm really kind of like, look, the left doesn't even want to acknowledge certain things which are obvious. Like, for example, let me give you an example. The resurgence of Russia in China. Okay, these are things, and regardless of what you think about China and Russia at the moment, okay, but what does it tell you about the world, about global politics, about geopolitics, if you like? What does it tell you about the historical process we're in? Has anyone ever thought about that seriously on the left? Because one thing that it definitely shows and that it demonstrates is coming is the decline of the West, of the collective West, as the Russians like to refer to it. Okay, for the last 500-600 years, the West has been running the world. Okay, it's America, Great Britain, whatever. It's over, guys, or it's coming to an end. Maybe it's not over yet, but it's coming to an obvious end. Okay, and now, part of the hysteria about China is the fact that they are too racist to actually accept that the Chinese are going to run the world now. Okay,
exactly.
But what I want to say is that, guys, does it not deserve at least some kind of political interest and discussion? And I don't see anyone organizing it except for some right wingers. Today, the right wing in Eastern Europe, and I despise the right wing in Eastern Europe, but I want to say that they are better anti-imperialists than the left is today. Not 15 or 20 years ago, but today.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. They have more charismatic leaders than the left has. They have the courage to say any nonsense, the most outrageous, stupid thing. Okay, they're just gonna gonna say it because they know they're gonna score points. Okay, yeah. So and we should we shouldn't say stupid things. We should say smart things, and we should say inspiring things. But that's what they are doing. They are obviously confronting the rottening order of liberal democracy that they've hated for the I don't know how many years, right? And why, why aren't we doing this? Like, not the same way, of course, with different arguments,
Yeah.
with our stance, with our morality, with our politics, with our ideas, and so on and so forth. But why aren't we doing this? Because we're afraid. Because we're afraid, because someone's going to say, oh, what about Joe Stalin? Well, I don't know about Joe Stalin. He's dead, as far as I'm concerned, right? So, no, but there aren't any real forces that I would be able to point to today and say, like, oh, those guys are the future of the left in Eastern Europe or something like that. Unfortunately, the situation, in my opinion, is very bleak. Ignorance, cowardice, and also the kind of the constant repetition, the mimicking of the Western kind of thing. It really pisses me off so badly. I don't even, I don't want to get triggered now online, but it's like they really think that when we are Western enough, then we're somehow going to convince people like it's 1989 and the legend of the prospering West is still alive. No, that's not true, guys. Come on. I mean, there are people already coming back from the West, migrants, okay, Eastern European migrants coming back from the West, saying like this is unbearable. And I understand that it's unbearable for them. Okay, I mean, I'm talking about open-minded people who studied abroad and then worked there and stuff, and they are just economically exploited to the extent that they prefer to be exploited in their own whatever homeland, okay, or home country or something, than to be there and be alienated, super alienated, because that's the experience of the majority of the migrant workers, except for some some small
Racism, the open
racism,
racism,
xenophobia, and stuff like that.
comes
Oh,
from plastic
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
Europe is
yeah, yeah.
backwards and stuff like that. And then of course, and of course,
And they come back, and also when you look at what's going on in what the Western left is doing today, then I just have the feeling that it's not only that they have they're ignorant, but they're high. I mean, really, when I look at what they're doing, what kind of ideas they come up with, or the American left, to that matter, like the transgender toilets and a critical race theory and stuff. Like, come on, I mean, people, and this is how you give ground, because you can't achieve anything through this kind of actions politically, but this is how you give ground to the right-wing extremists who are going to tell you that the Western left wants to turn everyone into some kind of inhumane people who are going to be programmed in terms of their emotions and their gender and stuff like that by those who say what is most fashionable at the moment. Okay, I mean, this is just a great gift for the right wing, okay, for those right wing populists, as they like to call them. And this is, and why are we even considering those things? Like, what are we doing? Where are we going with this? Whom is going to listen to us? And when you look at that, you could easily come to the conclusion, which of course the right wing is strengthening and exploiting and amplifying for their own purpose. They're going to say, no, don't look at the West. There's nothing interesting in the West anymore. There's nothing normal in the West anymore. Let's look somewhere where we like it. Let's look at let's look at Russia, for example. Because because that's what they would like to see. Just someone who's the patriarch of the country, like it's possible, even like it's possible to do the same, I don't know, in Hungary or I don't know, in Italy or in Spain or in Britain, to have the kind of the poor copy of the Russian system. Okay, of course it's not. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that we should have we do have our own ideas, and we should just put them forward, and let's see what happens. Okay, I don't know, maybe we win, maybe we don't win, maybe we all end up in nuclear tombs one day. I don't know, because of the prevalence of the current ideology. I mean, the right-wing ideology that is the predominant ideology right now. So I don't know what's going to happen, but like, what do we actually have to lose? I mean, we're in such a miserable situation. I just don't understand, where does this, it speaks probably to human condition, maybe to human nature, to things like that. I really don't know, because logically speaking, that all that the left is doing, or the majority of the things that the left is doing throughout Eastern Europe doesn't make much sense, in my opinion.
And on that note, we're going over time, so it's probably a good place to end. Yes, it's a bit bleak, but it's probably a very good place to end, I think.
Yeah, but let's not preach optimism, okay? Because this is another thing that's very irritating about the left, like preaching, optimism and that everything's going to be okay. Of course, our ideology, is very optimistic, and our ideology is about being optimistic, but not about lying to ourselves, okay? We do want. We want to
build a better world, but we have
we want to build a better.
We have to acknowledge this is how
exactly
shitty the situation is, and it's going and it's going to take more. It's going to take more than just a few reforms here and there in the system to get better. No, we need to confront the rotten system head on. But of course,
and there is no other hope, guys. That's very important. Stop preaching hope. It's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay unless we win this ideological political war globally. This is the only hope. Otherwise, there's no hope. Stop tapping each other on the arm, saying like, sooner or later, Trump's gone. Brexit happened. Maybe some other things that we don't like are going to be gone. Yeah, but the new things that you don't like even more are going to come. And this is
exactly. Exactly. Right. And this is why people of Eastern Europe, if you speak Bulgarian, Romanian, Polish, and English, this is why you should be supporting the Barricade, because this is one of the things that the Barricade is trying to fill, which is a huge hole, which is media, and that's a whole topic that we have to talk about another time, which is propaganda and how to confront propaganda. So on this edition of 1+1, we were joined by the brilliant Boyan Stanislavski. He is our left-wing intellectual from Eastern Europe, from Bulgaria and Poland.
I don't even have a degree, so
don't need a degree to be an intellectual. Right. A real one, that is. So, so Boyan, thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to having you back on, because there's so much more that we have to discuss, that we have to get into. But on this edition of 1+1, but yeah, once again, Boyan, thanks for joining us, and I look forward to speaking to you again. And best of luck with all that you're doing at the Barricade. And I really do encourage people to check out the Barricade, become a Patreon, and donate generously.
Sure. Thanks so much. Keep fighting and stay healthy.